Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if smart Naruto build legendary harem with Tayuya and Hinata, part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Pausing before laughing a little louder than polite, Ino grinned and flicked her hair. Oh, you're on. I'll have Naruto wrapped around my finger before you get out of here. As the two girls proceeded to trade barbs back and forth before an excited Naruto finally returned with a sealing book signed by an Kushina Uzumaki again. Their afternoon would continue with some peace until the two healthy teens were forced to leave. And while both Ino and Naruto felt like they had done a good job of cheering up their friend, it was a frowning Hinata that wasn't completely satisfied at the new piece of the puzzle that had been dropped on her. Jiraiya was not ready for the energy that a teenage boy could exude on a daily basis, and he had no problem admitting that. That said, it was truly fascinating watching the young Uzumaki work through problems in his own chaotic way. Sure, he was no genius, but show the kid how to do something and he would practice it over and over again until he got it. And his ideas about anything involving explosions and seals. Yeah, even Jiraiya was rethinking some things. He'd never had to think about what would happen if one turned a storage seal inside out before, but that had been one of the first questions Naruto had asked. From there it was collapsing matrices, multi-layered explosion seals, ninja tool recall seals, and the hordes of clones that the kid could throw at any problem. Jiraiya could tell him that a seal took him years to figure out and learn, and with clones the kid shortened it down to days if not hours. And wasn't that a kick in the gonads, such a cheat skill? He did have to correct a few things with the kid about the clones though. He had been assuming that because the clones had no mass that it was harder to see them. The truth was that the clones pretty much blanketed an area with chakra, and with them using shunshin at the same time it was like trying to locate a specific drop of water in a river. Considering he was using the tactic of suicide bombing clones, this was something he was going to start doing often and with extreme prejudice. Not that the old sage would stop him, or could really. But that was the point. Jiraiya was learning with the boy. Even if he was doing something wrong for a long time, it seemed all he needed was someone to correct him with genuine effort and he'd be doing things right from then on. It was exhausting to deal with, really. And there was the other thing. Hey pervy sage, the Hokage said I could keep this book of seals, isn't that awesome? Cheering for himself, the boy sat down to quickly get to seal practice, some new idea in his head. Jiraiya couldn't figure out how the kid kept seeming to find leftover scrolls and books from his mother, but he shouldn't have been at all. Everything from the Uzumaki clan was supposed to be in a vault, specifically for him when he got older. Sensei had said that they must have been lost before the vault was sealed, but Jiraiya wasn't buying it. He had watched Kushina write the one Naruto currently had, and it had been around the later months of her pregnancy. No time to get lost before her death. Shaking the thought free and trusting the Hokage, Jiraiya walked forward and ignored the lines of clones balancing on kunai. Don't forget your summoning practice. Oh right. Naruto idly made the necessary seals and slammed a hand down. A much smaller poof of smoke later and a small toad just slightly bigger than his hand was there giving a salute to the boy who was already bringing out a decent bag of candy. Yo bro, what crazy stuff are we doing today? Gamakichi, son of Bunta the Toad Boss, was summoned a few days ago as Naruto got a feel for the toads and how he could work with them. These two had become fast friends over a general love of life and flashy things. Naruto sat the bag in front of his small friend and pointed at his book. Nothing crazy today. Trying to figure out this seal idea I have. I wanna seal an explosion in a storage seal, and then compress it. He really wasn't even sure if such a thing would work. But his idea was to seal way more than the normal amount of explosives in a seal, then seal that first seal within a complex matrix of compression seals. The idea was to ignite all of the explosives inside the first seal, then rupture it. The compression seals would fight it, attempting to crush the explosion in the size of a chickpea, and hopefully by the time they failed, the explosion would be beyond a critical point and would be way larger than it should be since it had the extra time to ignite all of its material. He had learned in earlier experiments that when his normal explosives ignited, not everything went off at once. That was lost material and was not efficient, and if he was exploding stuff, he was going to make sure he exploded everything. Of course, that would only happen if he got this to work. The rest of the day was spent like that, Jiraiya looking over Naruto's shoulder and giving him tips and advice, but mostly allowing the boy to work through the problem on his own. As per Naruto's normal routine, Ino eventually came to visit with lunch in hand. Jiraiya liked the spunky girl and approved of her methods. The way Naruto had described her at first, he was ready to meet a fangirl or some vapid body chaser. But watching the girl occasionally train alongside the boy as well as put away the food just like him, he had a better opinion now. Though he could tell this was a recent change in her. Her body still on the skinny side, but she was beginning to put on some healthy weight and muscle. Now he just had to meet the little Hyuga girl to get a better idea of Naruto's tastes. Watching the sun begin to fall while Naruto was laying out a large sheet of paper, the Toad Sage sighed, "Please tell me this isn't another explosion experiment." Unsealing a small pot of toad oil graciously given by one of the many toads he had summoned up till now, Naruto nodded without even looking. Explosions are pure beauty given form. Jiraiya knew society had done the boy wrong at some point. You mean women, not explosions. Naruto began packing explosive notes all around the pot, before adding lines of seals from the pot to connect with the paper and the storage seal he had modified. Well, sure, yeah, but I'm too young for that, so explosions over women. Sighing and sitting down, Jiraiya shook his head. I'm so going to have to take you away from this village and fix you if they have your brain scrambled that badly. Maybe it would give him time to figure out how to tell the kid he was his godfather. Naruto grinned as he finished his work. He had connected and modified everything as per his and Kushina's own notes, so now was just to test it. Applying chakra to the seal, it first sealed away the pot and explosive notes, leaving behind a large sheet of chakra with excessive seals inscribed on it. Then at the second point and another poof, a sheet of chakra paper not much larger than a normal explosive note. Grinning in excitement, Naruto tied the seal to a kunai and pocketed it for later. Now with the more known value explosive experiment out of the way, it was time to move on to the unknown one. Drawing forth a second storage scroll and unsealing its contents, it was Jiraiya that again piped up. "What's that all about, kid?" Seeing a bedsheet-sized seal matrix that was half-finished along with several baskets worth of rocks, the old sage could only wonder at what the kid was thinking. Moving the basket of heavy metal to the center of the array and already working on seals around it, Naruto was nervous as he explained this one. "Have you ever thought about what happens when you put something in a storage seal?" Shrugging as something so basic wasn't on his radar, Jiraiya shook his head. "Can't say that I have." Naruto nodded. "I never did either." "Sure, yeah, anything you put in a seal is kinda set in stasis and that's it. But I was always curious, could you make the storage seal do other things? Like say turn something inside out or liquefy it? Or like I wanna do, break something down to its base pieces? And why would you wanna do that? It's just going to be in storage. Not when I destabilize the seal and turn it inside out." Missing the Jiraiya's horrified look, Naruto pressed on with his experimental seal. It was a silent 10 minutes that passed before Naruto activated this seal. Watching as first it scrolled together and miniaturized itself before rolling into a normal-looking storage scroll. The 3 black bands that held it closed were a nice touch and made sure he wouldn't mistake it for another scroll. Again into a pouch this one went, and it was saved for another day. Today wasn't the day to test this out after all. Granted, there might not be any day to test that out anytime soon. Maybe after the finals he and his team could take a mission out of the village. Beginning to dispel his clones in groups so he could make sure he didn't run into a mental strain, Naruto turned to his current sensei. "I'm pretty much done for the day. Thinking about it, he should probably up his weights tomorrow since it was getting pretty easy to move about again." Jiraiya looked the boy over before walking forward and laying a hand on his shoulder. You've worked hard this month, kid. I'm proud of ya. While Naruto wasn't completely warmed up to the pervert, he could admit that the man had not only done a lot for him, but had also treated him as a real ninja. He didn't automatically assume Naruto was joking around or looking to play a prank. He took him seriously like a sensei should, and Naruto appreciated that. Plus, he had helped him take one more step closer towards being Hokage. Now, if he just didn't have to peep so often. The finals are in a few days, so that means training time is done. Spend a few days relaxing and resting. Let your body heal. At most, you can practice your seals at home, while being safe, and that's it. No explosions. Jiraiya had to get some things ready as well. He was on duty for the exams after all. Nodding and figuring the man would say something like that, Naruto turned to leave, Gamakichi in his hair. Alright, pervy sage. I'll see ya later. And like that, he was off, bouncing through the trees. The Kyuubi jailer was in a good mood today. His training had been going well and his experiment seemed to work out just as he had hoped. Now maybe to round out a good day he could go and visit Hinata-chan before heading home. Besides hanging out with Gamakichi, there wasn't much to do after all. Hey bro, I actually need to get back, I'll see ya later. And like that, the Oyabun's son was gone and Naruto was on his own. Shrugging and wishing the little toad well in his mind, Naruto now reduced his evening to yet another dinner alone. Bursting out into the outer areas of the village, Naruto made a beeline for the hospital. Hopefully Hinata wasn't asleep this time, as the last time he tried to visit she had been, and the nurses had looked at him funny when he had decided to watch over her instead of go home. It's not like he had anything else to do. Shaking that thought from his head and hopping over rooftops towards his goal, he decided he was going to keep his good mood. B. The village was alive with visitors and had gained a festive feel that even the civilians had been swept up into. The day of the finals was here and people from all walks of life were ready to see the conclusion. Naruto, however, was checking the last of his equipment and making preparations with his various seals and weapons. He had made sure to deactivate his weight seals and have moved anything experimental into a special pouch he now kept on his lower back. Didn't want that stuff to be in easy reach after all. Pretty sure he'd not be promoted if he blew up the stadium. However, that was an hour ago and now he was making his way to the competitor entrance of the arena. Or he would be if he hadn't spied Hinata-chan and Inohime waiting for him. Running up to the girls with a smile, Naruto was full of cheer that was infectious. Good to see you out of the hospital, Hinata-chan. Hinata nodded. I was told to take it easy. But I'm cleared for light duty from now on. Kurenai-sensei was waiting for her in the stands, ready to cheer their friends on, or in her case, just this one. The girl shivered slightly but tried not to draw attention to it. She had forgotten her jacket at home, but knowing she was meeting with Naruto had prevented her from going back and getting it. Ino had bounced forward and slugged the boy in the shoulder. You better knock him dead, and give that lazy Shikamaru a reason to actually do something. While she would happily root for both her teammate and her crush, she knew who she wanted to see take it all. Naruto, however, had focused on the pale girl next to them, and driving his sword into the ground for a moment he removed his jacket. Before either girl could say a word, Naruto had draped it over Hinata's shoulders. Stepping back and admiring his work, the girl looked good in black. Keep it safe for me, would ya? Things are gonna get dicey and I've gotten kind of attached to it. Sure, making up a reason to keep the girl warm was a little underhanded, but seeing the color return to her cheeks meant it was a job well done. Knowing the near meltdown Hinata wouldn't be able to answer anytime soon, Ino turned to the bare-armed boy. New look. I approve. Naruto had decided that the black had looked decent on him. Plus it hid the carbon from his explosions pretty well. So he now wore black combat boots with mainly black cargo pants. They did have orange highlights around the ankles, knees, and the waist, however. Black weapons pouches adorned each hip and the small of his back now, while pockets lined with storage seals took care of kunai and shuriken. His other addition was a black mesh shirt and orange muscle shirt. Normally his jacket would break it up, but he didn't need it today. Returning his sword to his back, Naruto chuckled, "Someone keeps harping on me about fashion and function, so I decided to listen." Happy in a way she couldn't fully describe, Ino nodded and stepped away from Naruto. "We'll be cheering for you, so you better knock 'em dead." Leaning closer in a mock whisper, the girl held a hand to her face. "Just don't blow up Shika, K." Nodding, Naruto turned to go. "Don't worry, I'll take it easy on him if we have to fight. But I plan on winning this thing." Turning and running through the entrance, he missed the slightly jealous look Ino shot Hinata. "Bet you're real warm in there, aren't you? Like you wouldn't believe, you harpy." A more bold Hinata pulled the jacket tighter around her shoulders. Rolling her eyes and walking the girl inside, "Ino couldn't let that slide, friend or not," says the cow who only has one thing going for her. "Some girls just flower later. It's okay, Ino-chan. You win today, but I'll make up for it, just you wait." Snuggling deeper into the jacket with a smile, Hinata shrugged. "You never know." She had gotten closer to the truth over the last few weeks. And her idea and plan might just have some merit. Naruto, however, was no longer having thoughts about cute girls with soft curves. No, today was the day of the finals. Today he'd get a stage to show off his skill, his art. Then his eyes landed on the other competitors, and he was reminded that today was the day he got to wipe the floor with a certain stuck-up Hyuga. So as he came into the lineup and waited for instructions, Naruto's mind was already moving along with battle plans. For another 10 minutes the group waited while the proctor, a different man Naruto didn't recognize, stood watching them. An Anbu member jumped down to whisper something into his ear which had him scoffing but turning his full attention to them all. "Sasuke Uchiha is late, but is being given a bye at the moment till his match. Remember, you are all fighting for the glory and status of your villages along with your own advancement. These matches are to the death or submission. Unless I step in at any point. If I say a match is over, that means it's over. Anyone stepping out of line will be disqualified and disciplined, understood?" At everyone's nods, Genma motioned to a stairwell. Everyone not Naruto Uzumaki or Neji Hyuga are to wait in the competitor's box. As everyone else left, Naruto and Neji paced away from each other. Neji was already bored and ready to be done. "What is some nameless loser supposed to do with me? You're weak and a failure, just quit and save yourself the shame." Naruto, however, was ignoring him, searching the stands for Ino-hime and Hinata-chan. He wanted to make sure they were safely seated. Belatedly he remembered that several disguised clones were on that jacket and hoped they would behave. That also meant he'd have to make some new ones for himself eventually. Turning and spotting the seething boy once he had seen them among some of their other rookies, Naruto shrugged. "Sorry, you say something. So hip and cool. Kakashi taught you well." Neji didn't, however, let him break his calm. "I said you might as well quit. You failures never know when to give up and accept life isn't fair. You can't work past your fate." Naruto shrugged, hands on his hips. "I guess we'll see in minute, huh? Are you ladies done or would you like to sit down for some tea?" Genma was already over the teenage melodrama. But seeing the boys nod he amplified his voice. "Round 1 between Neji Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. Begin." And he was gone in a shunshin, ready to step in if needed. Neji was already closing the distance, palm already outstretched. "I'll make this quick." Feeling his hand make contact, he already knew something was wrong. "Yeah, you will. Ta-ta." The clone only had a split second before it exploded, sending the pale Hyuga spiraling through the air on an uncontrolled course. Hidden away in the trees by a kawarimi, Naruto made a dozen clones with specific instructions and waited while they set upon the boy. No sense getting close to a Hyuga. Hinata had taught him that. Neji hit the ground and rolled, coming to his feet as fast as he could. Byakugan activating, he noticed with some frustration that he couldn't tell the clones from the real Naruto, each having a chakra network. Spinning in place and connecting a foot with the chest of one, he felt a hand slap his calf. Ooh, so close. As the clone poofed away, the tag it left behind sizzled before again exploding. Though this one was more of the training variety, it still sent Neji for a tumble, which was stopped by another clone first kicking him into the air and then smashing a fist into his face. Common, I thought you Hyuga were good at taijutsu. Sent off in a new direction like a pinball, Neji wasn't given time to make a plan or dodge properly. Upset that his trump card was already coming out, Neji frowned as he might have underestimated the boy. As three clones were jumping towards him at once, he began to spin, Kaden. Pouring chakra from his pores and rotating like a buzzsaw, the dome of chakra exploded into existence. The three engaging clones all met their end, while the remaining seven held back and waited. Once the Hyuga finished his spin, they were on him again. Though now more alert though damaged and bleeding, Neji was able to defend himself a bit better, dispelling several clones before he caught sight of something appearing behind him just outside his blind spot. It'd eat up chakra, but he was already starting another Kaden. Still in the trees and making another dozen clones, the blonde Uzumaki frowned. So the Byakugan really did give him the ability to see 360 degrees around himself. His reaction time was also pretty good. No Orochimaru or Jiraiya, but still decent. That meant it was time for Operation Ankle Biter. Mentally sending the order and watching things unfold, Naruto had to wonder if this might be a little overkill. Neji frowned as even more clones began appearing from the trees, another dozen it looked like. Tightening his stance, he was able to finally pick out what he thought was the real one, the chakra network more complex than the others. Dodging and rolling between the attacking clones while showing off why the Hyuga could be considered so dangerous, he finally got within range. You're within range of my divination. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Puzzling chakra coursing through his hands, he lunged forward at the surprised Naruto. 2 palms. 2 hits and an explosions much larger than the others later, Neji's bleeding form was ejected from the plume of smoke in the opposite direction. Landing in a heap and barely conscious, Neji could only look up as several Narutos all surrounded him. You gave me what I wanted to see. One of the Narutos nodded. You're pretty easy to figure out, you know. Life was shitty to you, probably too young to do anything about it, and now you lash out at everyone else. I'd say I was like that once too before turning to pranking, but that wouldn't do it justice really. Squatting next to the downed Hyuga, the clone grinned, blue and purple eye shining. I promised Hinata not to kill you. And I honored that because I think she deserves a real apology from you. She's stronger than you or me after all. Maybe you should re-evaluate what that means yourself. Then all of the clones dispelled as the proctor dropped down into the field. Genma saw that Neji was unable to continue and raised his hand. Winner of the first round, Naruto Uzumaki. The crowd roared with approval and it brought a small smile to Naruto's face. As he looked up and found Hinata and Ino cheering just loud enough for him to hear, though, his smile brightened even more. He would definitely be making this an explosion of a debut for the new him. Above him and in the stands, Ino shook Kiba hard enough to send his eyes swirling. Did you see that? He wiped the floor with Neji. He never even got hit once. That's some real skill. Hinata nodded. He's trained so hard. He was already something of a powerhouse at the preliminaries. How much do you think he's improved since then? Kurenai was watching the boy curiously as he left the arena. She had been happy with the changes in her charge lately and had figured that the girl had finally worked up the courage to talk to him. Seeing him now in battle, she was starting to get an idea of why Hinata herself was beginning to push herself. If I had to say, just on tactics alone he's chunin ready. Kiba looked up to his sensei, that knucklehead. How so? He just spams clones and loves blowing things up. Kurenai nodded. But from another perspective, he kept himself out of harm's reach, knowing the Hyuga penchant for close-range battle. He used his clones to ascertain his opponent's skill and come up with a plan. That shows an ability to at least lead a small squad. Yes, If this was a match to the death, he could have ended it sooner by blowing Neji apart with that first clone, but he didn't. That shows thought and restraint. And last, after finding the Hyuga's hidden techniques, he devised a way to counter them in the simplest way that worked with his skills. Kurenai nodded to herself. Battle coordination, basic planning, and skill level. The boy was Chunin material in her mind. But hers wasn't the only one that got to decide that after all. Slightly behind her, the sensei of Team 10 Asuma spoke up. Gotta admit, I wasn't really expecting Kakashi's explosive happy student to get so far. He's got some talent. That he might be losing some Ryo by the end of this was a sore spot though, and he just knew the masked ninja was going to be smug about it. Leaning back now and grabbing an embarrassed Shoji by the neck, Ino was laughing away. Hear that? Naruto might be the first of us to hit Chunin. How's that for Academy dead last? Which was really a weird thing. What had happened after leaving the Academy to change Naruto so much? Or was this who he always was and he just hadn't gotten the correct teachers to bring it out of him? Mysteries and questions. Down below and inside the competitor's box was a happy Naruto leaning against the viewing window. He got to trounce Neji and make Hinata smile. That was a good day in his book. Though the glare he could feel burning into the back of his head was a different matter. The red-head boy is like you. Don't disappoint me. The Kyuubi had decided to speak up. Odd that. You mean a container? Well, why didn't you tell me sooner? Naruto was only slightly upset that he heard nothing else from the fox, but that should have been expected. The Kyuubi was willing to act like a battery when needed and not a moment before. The fact that he warned him at all probably meant that he wanted to make sure Naruto didn't embarrass him as a container. Not that he would, since he still had some flashy stuff to show off today. Shikamaru, however, sidled up next to the blonde, bored and ready to be home. Did a pretty good job there, exploity boy. Any chance you could take it easy on me later? Naruto shrugged. I did promise Inohime not to blow you to pieces. But that does give me other options. Looking over at the pineapple-haired boy, Naruto nodded only slightly to Gaara. Be careful with that one if you have to fight him. Don't fight him at all if you can. Surprised that Naruto had caught on to that, the tactical boy nodded while dropping his voice to a whisper. Yeah, I was actually going to warn you myself. Glad we're on the same page. Hearing the proctor announce that the match between Shino and Kankuro went to Shino by forfeit, Shikamaru frowned. Guess that was a pretty shitty matchup. Shino's bugs would tear through his puppets. Naruto nodded as the next match was announced. You're up, lazy bones. You spend way too much time with Ino. However, Shikamaru headed down to the stands without further prompting, mind nagging at him. Naruto, however, was trying to get in touch with the fox. Hey you furry, I got a question for you. Speak it then. I was enjoying a nap. Wondering just why a 1,000-year-old fox would want to nap at all when stuck inside a cage. Naruto shook it off. How worried should I be about Gaara? There was a growl in response before Naruto felt the demon consider the question. The demon within him, Shukaku, is absolutely a nutter. Based on what I'm feeling, their seal is much weaker than ours. So I will offer this one bit of advice. Do not let that boy go to sleep. If he does, you will be fighting the demon, not him. Naruto nodded to himself and watched an irritated Shikamaru battling it out against Temari. Apparently his original opponent Dosu was a no-show. I'll keep that in mind. Naruto was trying to follow Shikamaru's match, but it was slow going. The boy had figured out that he couldn't get close to Temari no matter what he tried, so he seemed to be trying to wait her out. Temari was marking lines in the dirt and staying behind them, already having figured out Shikamaru's range with his shadow tendril. And she knew better than to try to take to the shadowed treeline. That was an instant loss for her. Which mean as the morning turned into the afternoon and even a little further, Naruto was ready to toss a clone or two to speed things up, and from the sounds of it so were the rest of the crowd. It was in the end thanks to several craters left before from his explosions that allowed Shikamaru to catch the fan-wielding girl. Though Naruto and everyone else was frustrated when after all that the tactical boy surrendered anyway on some excuse about using too much chakra. Possibly true, but doubtful. More likely the boy was just ready to be done with the exams. Somewhere out there Naruto could hear Ino screaming. This however meant Gaara was soon down in the field alone and waiting for his own opponent. One Sasuke Uchiha who was still late. It was Shino who snuck up on the Uzumaki. Did your teammate decide to back out? Voice quiet, the Aburame was not normally one to reach out. Naruto shook his head, he's with Kakashi-sensei, so more likely they're either being fashionably late or drama queens. Seeing the swirl of leaves and the appearance of his missing team members, Naruto pointed and nodded, yup, drama queens. Naruto had wished Sasuke had been there earlier so that Naruto could warn him, but all he could do now is wait and hope his rival could hold his own. Naruto fingered his sword however, ready to leap in and interfere regardless on the exam. He had felt that bloodlust from the sand ninja briefly, and he wasn't going to give him the chance to kill a friend. The roar of the crowd, the warm sun against his shoulders, and a confident grin on his face. Sasuke was living for the spotlight at this moment. Sure they were late as per Kakashi-sensei idea, but they were here and Sasuke was ready to take on his very dangerous opponent. Any later and we would have called it. You already got a bye once. Genma was not amused however. Ninja were meant to be on time. Kakashi had the decency to at least pretend to be chagrined. Ma, we're here now right? I'll just move on. Kakashi jumped away towards the stands where he spotted Asuma and Kurenai. Maybe he could get an update about what had gone on so far. Gaara was already vibrating, so you've shown yourself. I hope you were worth the wait because mother craves blood. Sasuke looked between the oddly grinning Gaara and then Genma who still looked bored beyond measure, as a sanity test not part of the Chunin exams. Rolling his eyes Genma raised his hand, kid, enough of us are cracked, be happy he isn't foaming at the mouth. Pausing to amplify his voice the proctor turned his gaze to the crowd, the next match between Sabaku no Gaara and Sasuke Uchiha. Begin. And he was out of the ring. Sasuke however sighed as Gaara didn't move a muscle, this wasn't going to be any fun, well, gonna have to take a page out of Naruto's book. Subtly releasing a seal tag on his wrist, several connected seals burned away off of his person. Gaara however just crossed his arms and waited, come and prove yourself already. I'm bored. The Sasuke before him blurred and before he could react his sand rose to defend him, impacting Sasuke's roundhouse before the boy jumped away. Another breath and another impact, this time behind him. By the time he turned, a brace of explosive note-laden kunai were intercepted by his sand. Above them Naruto watched the match with a curious eye. Sasuke had indeed gotten faster, and had started using some of his own tactics. Though he couldn't spam clones he could at least apply liberal use of exploding notes. Watching a wall of sand rise up in an attempt to capture his teammate, Shikamaru was coming up next to Naruto again. Naruto already knew it had to be some bad news by the way the overthinker was frowning. What's up Shika? Wanna join the cult of explosions too? Rolling his eyes hard and ignoring the hyperactive blonde's use of the other pain in his blonde's nickname for him, Shikamaru gave a quick glacé to the other sand nin, both of which seemed to be itching to do something. Just wanted to give you a heads up, ever since the match started they've been extra jumpy. Voice low so as to not carry, Naruto immediately hardened his gaze but didn't look over. Naruto nodded slowly, mentally commanding his clones with Hinata to be on alert. You're the thinking type, what are you thinking? Shikamaru leaned on his arms over the ledge of the window, watching as Gaara built a ball of sand around himself. Sasuke tried to penetrate it with kunai and explosives to little affect. Not completely sure. All these people, outsiders especially, normally I wouldn't think something could go down at all. Giving Naruto the side-eye he voiced a dark thought, unless this is something really big. Naruto shrugged, sounds political and not really my thing. I blow things up Shika, brutally and efficiently. Getting the message the lazy genin nodded, Well, I hope I'm wrong, but I get the feeling you're gonna have a chance to do just that soon. Both of them were distracted as the sound of thousands of birds chirping hit their ears. Looking up at the stadium wall, they found Sasuke clutching his arm while it looked like he was clutching lightning itself. Within the next moment, he was racing down the wall and towards Gaara's heavy defense, electricity arcing into the ground and digging a trench along his way. As he got closer and they noticed his Sharingan activated, Gaara shot forth spikes in order to impale him. With the advantage of his Dujutsu, Sasuke was able to avoid impalement while delivering his own attack, burying his arm up to the shoulder to make contact with Gaara himself. Did he get him? Naruto was leaning forward now, hand on his sword and playing with the grip. Don't think so, the defense is still up. Sasuke seemed locked in place and it was a struggle before he could pull himself free, a large brown and blue veined hand trailing him. After a moment it stopped, retreating back into the hole Sasuke had made where he could just make out a very inhuman eye. Is this blood? Is this my blood? I'm bleeding. Mother. And all hell broke loose. Around them they could make out feathers falling, all of the present Junin catching the genjutsu and dispelling it, while several Chunin and most genin along with all of the civilians were caught. Notably, Hinata was able to spot the signs along with Shino and Sakura. Dispelling it for the others took a few moments, but Hinata was not prepared for 4 clones of Naruto to reveal themselves from her borrowed jacket. Each of them had hard but determined looks on their faces as 3 took up defensive positions around her and the 4th saluted to Sakura. Meet us in the arena, Sakura. It's gonna be a party. Dispelling in order to warn his boss, the clone was gone in the next moment. Already Sound and Sand Ninja were discarding their disguises from where they were among the crowd. Below, Gaara had dropped his sand defense and was joined by Baki, his Jonin sensei, and his siblings. Behind Sasuke he heard a 2 thumps and was already grinning as Naruto came up on his right and Sakura came up on his left. Figured you'd get caught in the illusion, Naruto. Knowing he was horrible with genjutsu, Naruto couldn't deny it. One of my clones popped at the right time. Messed with my chakra and dispelled the illusion. In front of them Genma had dropped down to take on the other Jonin. Baki turned to Temari and Kankuro. Why isn't he transforming? What's the problem? Temari looked frantic. He used too much chakra, he needs a while to recover. Scoffing, he turned his full attention to the proctor. Get out of the village and wait nearby. When he's ready, enact the plan. Like a shot the 3 teens were gone. Genma looked back at the kids behind him. Go after them, finish what you started, Sasuke. Sasuke looked around as did Naruto. They both came to a quick conclusion at the same time. Think you can go crazy for a bit? Naruto nodded. I'll need a boost up, and someone to watch my body. We can do that. Coming up behind them was a stern-looking Hinata, shoulders shrouded in Naruto's jacket and flanked by a feral-looking Kiba and a tall and stoic Shino. I remember Naruto-kun telling me about what happens when he uses too many clones. We can watch his back. Team 10 isn't far away as well, helping with evac in case we need backup. Sasuke turned and offered a hand to his friend. No time then, we gotta move. Spinning himself twice and slinging Naruto around in an arc, he launched the slightly shorter boy as high up in the air as he could. Giving a nod to Sakura, they both wished their teammate well and were off after their own target. Naruto was grinning as he reached the arc of his flight, just making eye level with the top of the Colosseum. Making his signature hand seal, he poured more chakra than he ever had into the seal. This was gonna hurt later for sure. Taju Kage Bushin no Jutsu. And the horde was born. Across the village, hidden in the leaves, the combined forces of the Sound and the Sand Ninja were making headway. They had the element of surprise in numbers. Against an unprepared leaf, it was close to a rout at first. Then the orange blurs slammed into them. Almost all at once the invaders began meeting the same if slightly varied fates. On an empty street, a squad of advancing Sand Ninja were blown into pieces. A clone had sunshined into their midst, covered in exploding tags already lit. After the detonation of fire, light and sound died away. A crater and a pink mist was all that was left of the group. Further away, retreating civilians and academy students were caught by several squads of sound ninja. But in the next breath a clone was there, one burying a kunai into the skull of the squad leader. One of his subordinates destroyed the clone, but it mattered little when a dozen more replaced it. With both squads soon falling to the overwhelming numbers, the surviving clones moved on, prioritizing eliminating enemies and leaving civilians to the other more experienced ninja to help with rescue. Not far away, a civilian had fallen behind with their child, caught by a grinning sound ninja. As he raised a kunai to finish them off and move on, he was dog-piled and subdued. A grinning copy of the boy helping the duo up and back towards the shelter, promising they would be safe from here. Towards the wall there came a crash and a section ceased to exist, 3 large snakes breaking the barrier and moving to destroy as much as they could. They would however not get far as Naruto clones were already waiting for them. Armed with jars of toad oil laden with exploding notes and seals, several dozen clones wearing the jars as backpacks allowed themselves to be swallowed whole. Each snake swallows several, thinking it an easy meal, but the resulting explosions rendered all of them just as much useless meat. Left without large targets to swarm, the remaining clones near the wall turned to the cannon fodder forces trying to enter the hole. None would make it past the barrier. Several clones almost immediately forming up into squads and unleashed hell. Some using modified explosive kunai and shuriken to tear apart enemy squads, while some went the suicide route while using their specially made explosive bracelets. This freed up more Leaf Ninja to help with relief efforts and fortified defenses in other sectors of the village. All over the village, Leaf Ninja would eventually recant various tales of the blonde clone user with assisting with ninja takedowns or minor evac efforts. Many noted that the kid knew what he was good with and tried to leave the delicate work to actual flesh and blood people. Through it all and doing his best to keep himself together and direct clones where needed, Naruto had landed on the ground in a 3-point stance and was holding his sword freely but loosely on his back, ready to swing if anyone got near him. Of course, being at the epicenter of his swarm, the arena and surrounding stands were empty of enemy nin with exception to the very talented that the Jonin sensei were taking care of. But as Team 8 watched the boy, they all were slightly worried for him as they watched his eyes moving rapidly but unseeing of any of them. And what was that blood? Yo Hinata, is the baka crying blood? Hinata watched both her surroundings and the boy in question with her Byakugan active, and she could confirm that he was indeed bleeding. And his purple eye, were those ripples around the pupil? What was that? Sakura and he warned me that it's very taxing to command his clones this way. It's part of why his jutsu is labeled a kinjutsu. Whistling and trying to follow Genma and that Sand Jonin fight, Kiba nodded, no kidding, maybe I got off easy. Shino, quiet as ever, felt the need to speak up. He did, as they say, beat you like a dog. Hey. Coughing and dropping completely to his knee, Naruto seemed to be snapping out of it as he reached a shaky hand into his pouch and pulled free a soldier pill. Popping it and swallowing it dry, he just knew he overdid it. But he was out of clones for now and hopefully he'd recover by the time he met up with his team. Thanks guys, you know which way Sasuke and Sakura went. Shaking their heads, they were suddenly met with the stern face of the sensei of Team 7. Naruto, good work, I'm going to summon Pakun and send him with you to find Sasuke and Sakura, form up and take down Gaara, understand? Kakashi knew Naruto had already done so much, but he also knew what Gaara was, and there wasn't anyone else that could stop that. Except for another container. Naruto was already levering himself up, sure thing, I should recover by then. Watching Kakashi summon his favorite nin dog, the blonde Uzumaki was off and out of the arena, and wave and salute to Team 8. What about a sensei? Kiba spoke up as Shino waited and Hinata watched Naruto go. Form up with the relief efforts and help with any civilians you see on the way. Kurenai should be able to find you soon for more detailed orders. Seeing the kids all nod before jumping away, Kakashi pulled up his mask. He still had some more hunting to do. Naruto was frowning as he made his way first over the rooftops and then over the village walls as he followed behind the nin dog. He had used a lot of time to stay behind and take care of as many invaders as he could. Hopefully it was of some help. Hearing Pakun grunt to get his attention, Naruto focused on the now. What's up? Forces ahead, at least 5, should we go around? Are they sound or sand? Through all of the memories he had collected, he had noticed that the sand ninja were more on par with leaf standards. But the sound nin were little better than fodder, and each game. From the smell I'd say sound. Naruto nodded and tightened his grip on this sword, finally having a chance to work out a theory. Then get behind me, I'll be working through them. Creating 2 clones and actually feeling the dip in his reserves from it, he leapt into battle. Told to pursue the sand squad and wipe out pursuers, the squad of 5 men were ill-prepared for a boy in orange and black to shunshin into the middle of them, already in mid-swing of his weapon, naughty sound nin. Twisting with all his might, Naruto swung his blade, bisecting 3 of the ninja in quick order. The last 2 were further away, one in the trees and one on the ground and backing away from the boy suspiciously clean of blood. 3 corpses now at his feet and a wide grin on his face full of glowing eyes. What the hell? Within the next breath a clone was gripping his chest with a glowing roll of chakra paper on its wrist. Boom goes the clone. Fire and viscera covered the trees and the last sound invader was already mid-throw of a brace of kunai towards the original Naruto. Die you brat. Launching the kunai at Naruto's back, he was unprepared for the boy to block the blades with the large flat of his completely repaired blade. What? Hand coming over and holding the mon's throat and mouth, the last clone was calm, you never should have come to Konoha. Another explosion, more useless meat rained on the ground. Naruto himself was already turning and heading in the direction they had been traveling before, Pakun only having to correct his course slightly. You okay, kid? Naruto nodded slowly, mentally filing away that it was blood that repaired the blade, not just killing. My chakra is a little low but replenishing, though I do have some trump cards if need be. He wiped away at the blood on his cheek before he could hear the sounds of fighting ahead. That them? Pakun nodded. I can smell your teammates, yes. I'll stay concealed. I can alert Kakashi if anything happens if need be. Naruto nodded. Thanks. Stay safe. And the boy was off, clearing some of the concealing brush and looking upon the combat zone. Sakura was down, a large hand made of sand holding her to a tree. Sasuke was locked in combat with Gaara, but he was very changed from when he last saw him, half his body covered in blue-veined sand now including his face. The black eye with gold pupil that looked down on them was completely not human. Below them Naruto could see Kankuro locked in combat with Shikamaru and a worried Temari was trying to get by him to her brother. Deciding that it seemed Shikamaru had the advantage in the forest, Naruto leapt to the same branch as a panting Sasuke. Take a pill, I'll cut in. Grunting but nodding, Sasuke reached into his pouch. He's a stamina freak like you. No matter what I hit him with he just keeps coming. Naruto was now all grins. Oh, I'm counting on that. Can you free Sakura? You both might need to make some distance soon. Sasuke nodded. Noted, I'll work on it. And he was off, trusting his rival to hold on till he got back. Naruto turned his own glowing eyes on the redhead. Any chance we can talk this out? Only if you're here to offer your blood to Mother. I will prove my existence. I won't let anyone end me. Rolling his eyes, Naruto pulled free 3 modified exploding kunai. Well, you're a nutter just like he said. Guess we gotta beat the crazy out of you. Putting on his full speed, Naruto launched his kunai as he ran. The first 2 were caught by his sand which detonated and blocked his view with smoke and glassed sand. The third lodged into the tree branch he was standing on, exploding and sending the boy tumbling through the air, wood and steel shrapnel tearing his legs apart. His healing factor taking over and before more sand began to cover his extremities. Well, that can't be a good sign. Launching more kunai and keeping his distance, he tried repositioning with a shunshin. As he landed some length behind the transforming boy dealing with his explosions to the front, Naruto launched another kunai at the grotesque tail he had grown. It landed home, and another large explosion sent the sand demon container flying with a scream of rage. Isn't doing enough, but I'm running low on the small stuff. Naruto wasn't completely sold on killing the other container. If the demon was driving him crazy, that made him just as much of a victim as he was, and it wasn't fair to just write him off. It'd be easier for sure, but not right. You know, you're getting uglier by the second. I'll tear you apart. We'll need to work on your taunts. Another reposition as the tree he was standing on was suddenly lost to a ridiculous amount of sand. Running and using up what was left of his shuriken, Naruto was able to build some smoke cover to reposition with another shunshin. This one much more stable as his chakra was returning at a great rate now, the soldier pill finally kicking in full speed. Seeing an opening, Naruto dashed forward, sword arcing downward and slicing the regrown tail clean off. Not stopping, Naruto was away from retaliation and looking for another opening. Maybe an arm this time. Could he regrow one? Or maybe he could just slice off the sand and miss the real body. That body was starting to get real big now, more and more resembling a tanuki. Rage finally reaching its peak, the boy's face finally became fully covers. You want to met your end so badly. Fine, I'll send you all to hell. False sleep. And in the next breath the boy was gone, and an entirely new entity took control. Oh shit. Naruto dashed backwards, hoping to find his team. Behind him a literal wall of sand was rising above the trees. He did find his teammates, a freed but injured Sakura, while a now heavily panting Sasuke was kneeling next to her. We got a big problem. Looking over the boy's shoulder, Sakura could see that Sasuke overdid it too. Kakashi-sensei apparently told him not to use the Chidori more than 3 times. But he used it a 4th to free me. Chuckling, the boy shook his head. No one gets left behind. Naruto nodded and turned to where he last saw Shikamaru and found the boy looking up at the demon in true fear. Cupping his hands around his mouth, Naruto put on a grin. We're going to go fight Big Ugly. You watch the siblings. With that, Naruto turned to his teammates and started making hand signs. Are you good on chakra, Naruto? Naruto placed his hand on the ground, welling up chakra and mentally calling up which of the toads who he'd need. Well enough for this, hold on, this'll be a ride. In a plume of smoke, all 3 members of Team 7 rose high above the trees. Above the forest stood the sand demon Shukaku. Screaming and relishing in being free, his container dangling from his forehead, the mountain-sized demon was already turning to complete its task to destroy the Leaf Village. But as more smoke cleared, he was met with the stoic pipe-smoking face of the boss toad himself, Gamabunta. Hey tadpole, you could at least summon me for a drink first. Not straight into a battle with this maniac. Naruto was grinning, sword on his back with bandages and bare arms crossed over his chest. Sorry boss, but I need a favor. Sakura and Sasuke looked on in awe, keeping themselves adhered with chakra. Gamabunta nodded, webbed hand trailing to his tanto. Let's hear it, kid. Don't think he'll give us time to plan much here. Naruto agreed. I'm gonna keep it simple. I just need that bastard a little bit further away from the village, maybe another mile, and then I just need you to launch a water bullet at him. That doable? Grinning, the toad nodded. You got it. Launching himself forward, the giant toad slammed feet first into the unprepared Shukaku. Then with another kick he was launched away from the village with some speed to land in a forest-destroying trench, struggling to get up. Naruto had unsealed a certain scroll with 3 black bands holding it closed, then created a clone with much more chakra than normal. Hoping the extra chakra would help it survive its journey. You got this. We got this, boss. The clone leapt down to the boss toad's nose. Hope you know what you're doing, kid. Gamabunta began forming the water bullet in his mouth, the clone sinking itself into it and protecting the scroll as best as it could. And with a cough, Bunta launched the bullet while Naruto recommended him to jump back to protect the team on the ground, which he did. As the Tanuki righted himself finally and leaned forward in order to charge forward again, he was slightly late to stop the ball of condensed water from impacting his gut. It wasn't enough to put him down, but that wasn't the point as the clone and its cargo were buried deep into its center mass. Injecting the last of its chakra, Naruto's clone did his duty. Naruto's more experimental scroll had a simple set of features if one was to explain it. First, the heavy metals he had sealed were broken down into the atomic structures. Then, the storage seal that held them was inverted or essentially turned inside out. The thought to Naruto was that all that stuff coming out from such a small space would be an explosion like no other. However, Naruto was not aware of what suddenly freed atoms with lots of space to suddenly move did to each other. And as the storage seal inverted and the compression seals failed, all those compressed atoms crashed into each other, splitting and forcing out more smaller components to complete the process again. And again. And again. Everything within 150 meters of the scroll did not just explode, mass almost instantly just ceased to exist. Next came a wall of light and then extremely sun surface temperature heat. Everything from Shukaku's slightly curled tail to his bent over head were thrown away in a wall of hell, just to quickly turn to molten glass. What little of his head remained was flash dried out a cry of anguish as connection to his container was forcibly severed. Gaara was spared death from fire only because the sand-turned glass absorbed so much heat, but the ensuing launch through the air and crashing through the forest nearly did him in. Break bones and leaving him in a heap just below the feet of the aged boss Toad who was covering his face from the light heat of the explosion that was now rising into the sky. And then the shock wave hit, throwing anyone not Bunta to their knees and forcing them to adhere to the ground with chakra. The wave would last for roughly 10 seconds, before a second less powerful wave of air edged back into the other direction. Through it all Naruto had watched the whole thing, eyes wide as he took in the largest explosion that he had ever concocted. It had worked, so much better than he had thought it would. And that was with improvised materials. Now he could find some truly heavy stuff to break down. And the oranges and reds and yellows of the flames danced in the sky, he smiled that this was something truly beautiful. In his mind, a fairly pleased fox growled in approval. This victory is satisfactory. To think a human could do such damage on their own. Sakura and Sasuke were just standing and looking at their teammate as he watched the mushroom-shaped cloud rise into the air. Where the sand demon had been, there was now a several 100-meter-wide crater covered in glass and molten rock. And as they watched Naruto jump down off of Bunta to confront the sand genin, they both shuddered and prayed Naruto never used that again. They jumped after their friend however, weak but ready to back him up. Behind them, Gamabunta bid them all farewell and returned to the summon realm. Naruto was tired and knew better than to try and down another pill. Hopefully the fight was all out of Gaara by this point. Walking up to the kid laying in a pile of sand and trying to crawl away, Naruto grabbed and hefted his sword. Have you had enough yet? Looking back and up at the blonde, into those glowing mismatched eyes and the sword that would soon end his life, Gaara panicked. Stay away. You can't end my existence. I've had nothing. Why do you fight so hard for these nothing people? Lowering his hand with a sigh, Naruto looked left, and then right as Sakura and Sasuke joined him. They aren't nothing. They're my friends, my precious people. If it wasn't for them I wouldn't be here. So I fight for them, not just for myself. That's why I can keep fighting, why I will keep fighting. So that I know they are safe. Something untouched in years cried out inside Gaara, the scared little boy who was first betrayed by his family. I can't have anyone precious, they'll betray you. Try to kill you. How can you trust them? Naruto shrugged. That's what it means to understand each other as family. I know they'd never betray me, and I'll never betray them. Naruto looked at the scared boy, seeing in himself another scared boy who had only wanted to be noticed and loved by someone. He wondered if this is what he would have been if no one had reached out to him eventually. Maybe you need to learn what it means to have a friend. So how about it? Me and you, let's be friends. Naruto was holding out his hand now, a smile on his face as the adrenaline started to come down and his body started to relax. Friends. The voice was small, scared, but Gaara's gaze was locked on Naruto's outstretched hand. Don't hurt my brother. Tamari burst out of the tree cover. Fan in tatters and in no shape to fight, but she stood over Gaara anyway. Kankura wasn't far behind, arms with a severed poisoned blade from his puppet. Looking at the worried look from his brother and the terrified look from his sister, willing to die for him in that moment, Gaara struggled to his knees. Tamari, Kakuro, both of the older teens looked back to their younger sibling with fear. Let's stop. It's time to retreat. Locking his gaze once again on the Uzumaki and Kakura helped him up. Gaara nodded. It's a new word for me, friend. Naruto nodded, hand dropping to his side. Well, get used to it. I like to collect them and you're now one of mine. I'll send ya a letter once our villages figure this all out. Sasuke leaned in. We can't just let them go, Naruto. Pakun with Shikamaru rushed forward, the small dog taking the lead. You can, actually. Kakashi just sent word. The sound had betrayed the sand from the beginning. They were used as pawns to make the invasion happen. Order her to let to Sand's siblings go. In his teeth Sasuke nodded and relaxed. Well, that's that then. Sakura nodded and started to look a groaning Naruto over. Hey, what's with the blood on your face? You get hit. Checking his eyes, they seemed fine, still just as mismatched but nothing else. Naruto tried and failed to push a fussing Sakura away from him. Well, you heard em. Get going, Gaara. We'll catch up later, as friends. Watching as his fellow container nodded, the siblings were gone and away. Soon meeting up with the retreating sand ninja and rushing back to their village. Dropping to the ground with a thud, Shikamaru rubbed his shoulders. That was way more of a hassle than I ever wanted. Can I just sleep here? Naruto sat down himself finally, holding his sword over his knees and letting Sakura check him over as much as she wanted. She really was taking the first aid stuff seriously. You know, I agree, Shika. A nap sounds good. I don't think I've ever used so much chakra in a single day. Sasuke completed the circle, sitting cross-legged as a finally satisfied Sakura moved on from Naruto to Sasuke. Other than some scrapes, I think I'm good, Sakura. You'll let me check you over anyway if you know what's good for you. Sasuke gave up with a sigh. At least now she was actually doing something, her own training this last month finally showing through. You've been busy while we were training for the finals. Sakura nodded as she bandaged up his burned and injured hand, burn cream applied to help speed along its recovery. Well, I had to lean into my skills somehow. And I'm really good at memorizing knowledge and analyzing situations. Seemed turning towards the support route wasn't such a bad idea. I'll catch up to you in combat soon enough, just you watch. Naruto nodded. I have complete faith in you, Sakura. Yeah, we still have to talk about whatever the hell bomb you just used back there. What was that? Sakura was just finishing up the bandage and looked over to Shikamaru, who waved her off, showing mostly clean arms. Pure beauty. Sasuke frowned. That's not really an answer. Wasn't really a question. I still have some chakra left. Want and kicking smart ass. Ooh, you think I'm smart? Hear that, Sakura? Tem thinks I'm smart. Nope. I'm done with you both. I'm taking Pakun and going home. All three genin stared at each other for a few moments, but laughing and coming together in a team hug. Pulling away and wiping tears, Shikamaru was looking at them as if he had never seen their like before. You three are weird. Sakura flicked him in the forehead. Stuff if lazy bones. Standing and dusting off her battle dress and shaking her shorter hair free of sand, Sakura grinned. Let's get back. I'm sure there's lots of cleanup to do. Naruto and Sasuke nodded, levering themselves up with a groan, and Shikamaru debated it before getting up with them. As they made their way back to the village, escorted by the summoned dog and eventually some grateful Anbu, for some reason, they would not find a fully happy reunion once they re-entered the walls of their home. Because though they had escaped the invasion with much few casualties than what would be normal, there was still a major one that crushed all of them. The third had fallen to Orochimaru's blade. The village hidden in the leaves, a new day was upon them. While damage from the invasion had been kept to a minimum, there was still damage all the same. Which meant rebuilding and recovery efforts were needed. This also meant for the genin and chunin, very few missions outside of the village at this time. Only the few jonin that could be spared would be taking patrols or long-term missions, to continue to project strength to the rest of the elemental nations. Not that at the moment they had so much of the problem of appearing weak. As word of the invasion reached the far reaches of the continent, news that the village had taken on a unified sand group and come out with little to no casualties was enough to make every other nation a little weary. A few of the more cautious and able to send out spies, would tell tales of a massive crater of glass and felled trees. A river had already punctured its side, and some of the locals projected a new lake would be filled before the year was up. None of the intrigue or increased infamy of the Leaf Village, however, mattered to the majority of the ninja at the moment. Most of all a certain blonde explosives expert. While they had time to mourn for the third and bury him, it would never be enough as far as the boy was concerned. More than his own connection to the aged leader, having to watch Konohamaru break down during the ceremony had not done Naruto any favors. Much for the simple fact that part of Naruto blamed himself. He could duplicate himself nay unlimited amounts of time, and somehow he couldn't help his leader at all. That was cutting him pretty deep lately. But several visits with Inohime and Hinata-chan had helped him slowly but surely. Inohime was good about reminding him that even as talented as he was still a genin. The fact that Naruto could even land a hit against the elder and much more experienced Nuke Nin was a major feat in and of itself. Plus, Naruto had protected most of the village, something that the Hokage would have been proud of. Hinata-chan was happy to be a quiet spot for him to just relax and not have to do anything. She let him vent and rave, tearing apart the training ground in a rage the first time they had gotten some downtime from recovery missions. But she didn't judge, didn't try to tell him what he was feeling was wrong. Only letting him know that she was there to support him, to help him if needed, or to just be a peaceful space. He didn't know he could do peaceful, but lately he had really needed it. Today was turning out a bit different, however, with Team 7, though they were gearing up to go to the Hokage Tower for mission assignments, it was a grim Jiraiya that intruded into their morning meeting. Yo! Kakashi-sensei was nodding to the older, more experienced ninja. What can we do for you, Jiraiya-sama? Jiraiya pointed at Naruto. I need the kid for a little while, got a mission for him. While he couldn't get into details with the other kiddies here, Kakashi at least caught on that this was something urgent. Kakashi nodded and turned to his team. Well, looks like plans are changing for today. If Naruto's needed, I suggest you both get some rest too. We have been pushing pretty hard lately. None of the other teammates mentioned that it was mostly for Naruto's sake, but they nodded all the same. And Naruto, my current order is still in effect. You have at least 2 more days before you can go back to training with your clones. Kakashi wasn't sure what sort of fatigue Naruto could still be recovering from, but they wanted to be sure that he didn't push himself at all just in case. Dutifully Naruto nodded before turning and walking away with Jiraiya, quiet and staring blankly ahead. Together they walked through the training grounds and then into the village proper, where Jiraiya finally started to talk. We have a mission from the council. Gonna be gone for a week at least. Do you need to pack? Naruto shook himself more awake. A mission might be just what he needed. No, I'm good. I always keep a scroll on me with travel supplies. Checking his pants, pouches, and jacket to make sure he had all of his scrolls while adjusting the bandage sling for Kubikiribocho, which was now covered at its forward tip with bandages as well, Naruto decided he was good enough to go. What's the mission? Jiraiya angled them for the main gate, going to be looking for an old teammate of mine. The last of the legendary 3, Tsunade. She a legendary healer, something the village could use right now. There was another reason as well, but the old sage figured he would give Naruto a little more time before bringing that up. Naruto nodded and focused ahead while trying to imagine some woman as old as the pervy sage. Admittedly, what he envisioned wasn't all that flattering, until the pervert handed over a picture. The young-looking pretty blonde was not what he was expecting. That's your teammate. She's like, at least half your age. Jiraiya snorted as he took the picture back. She uses a few different techniques in order to appear younger, so don't let that fool you. She's as old and as talented as me. Pausing to let that sink in and deciding the boy really needed some cheering up, he decided to work on his next present a little early. In the meantime, I've got something for you. A new technique. Something the fourth cooked up. Think you're ready. Naruto regained some energy, looking up to the sage with stars in his eyes, something the fourth made. What is it? Does it go boom? Rolling his eyes as they made their way from the village proper and hit the road, this kid in explosions. Maybe one day. See, when the fourth finished it, he admitted that it actually still had some more work to put into it. So who knows, you have some talent, maybe you'll be able to finish it where he couldn't. So saying, the toad sage took to the trees, knowing that Naruto would follow along. After a few minutes of dashing along the tree cover, they came to a small clearing where Jiraiya landed to stand next to a boulder. Naruto touched down not even a breath later and tilted his head, waiting for the older man to show him whatever it was he wanted to teach him. Jiraiya held up a hand where after a moment of concentration chakra began to shift and form into a glowing blue ball and spinning life energy. This is the Rasengan, and it was probably one of the fourth's more notable techniques. Yeah, the man used the Haraishin to great effect, but he didn't create it. That honor went to Tobirama. Jiraiya hefted the ball of spinning chakra with a grin, but don't let the look of it fool you. Turning and thrusting his hand into the boulder, he reduced it to rubble within a moment. Naruto, however, was already next to him, examining the wreckage and bouncing in place. How does it have so much damage potential? Can you make it bigger? Smaller? Can you throw it? Jiraiya leaned away from the suddenly excited boy. In order. It's a swirling mass of dense chakra, so dense that it'll grind through just about anything it comes into contact with. I'm sure you could make it both bigger and smaller, which would increase and decrease its damage potential. And I've never thought of trying to throw it, but I suppose if you could maintain the shape from a distance, then yeah, you could throw it. Naruto's mind was already racing, however. The pervert had said that it was incomplete, which meant there was probably more they could do with it. Never mind making it bigger, could he add explosive seals to it somehow? He made up his mind in an instant. I'm in, how do we start? Laughing and knowing that the kid was already thinking way too far ahead, the toad sage unsealed a bag of water balloons and handed them over. First you have to pop those. Only, you have to use your chakra to do so. Think about what you saw with the technique and use that. You'll get no more hints from me until you pop a balloon. And remember, Kakashi warned you about using clones. Nodding and accepting the bag from Jiraiya, they were off back towards the road to continue their trek. From there, Naruto began to practice with spinning his chakra this way and that, and coming up with nothing for his efforts. And this continued for a solid hour of their walk before he finally decided he needed to bounce ideas off of someone, and since the pervert wasn't going to help, well. A familiar seal was made and two more Narutos formed next to him. Again, clone usage. Naruto nodded. I'm not overdoing it, just two, and just to bounce ideas back and forth, nothing more. Seeing the sage frown at him for a minute before slowly nodding and looking forward, Naruto turned to his clones. What could I be doing different? I'm spinning it, but something doesn't look right. Naruto started again, the balloon becoming a disc or stretching in odd ways. Clone 1 crossed its arms. Well, that doesn't look like much of a ball, does it? Clone 2 nodded. Yeah, you're making disc, not a ball. How do we make a ball? Naruto frowned at that since that was the obvious thing. His chakra wasn't making a ball at all, so how did he do that? Playing with his chakra in the ball for a bit, small ripples formed along with the disc while his clones watched closely. Wait, do that again. Naruto looked over again at his clone. Do what? Clone 2 pointed at the ball. Whatever you did to make the ripples. It was starting to look more ball-like. Naruto nodded and started again, first spinning his chakra and then adding chakra at different times. The ball rippled and lost some of the flat shape, but didn't pop at all. Clone 1 was frowning even more. Wait. For our atomizer bomb, part of making it is compressing everything into a tight ball, right? Naruto nodded. Yeah, we compress it along a three-dimensional, right? Making a ball with spinning chakra would mean spinning all that chakra around a rotating axis, much like the bomb they had made. Kushina's notes saved the day again. Jiraiya mentally began making plans. While he didn't have much of an idea where Tsunade may be, he did know that her normal vices were probably their best bet. That meant drinking and gambling. And while drink could be found anywhere, gambling would be easier to narrow down. Especially when Tsunade herself had so many debts to her name. Jiraiya gave thanks that if he didn't have his spy network, then tracking down the woman would probably be an impossibility. Deciding that at this rate they would probably have to bunker down in the next town over for the night, Jiraiya turned to the boy to at least keep him in the loop about his plans. And then he got a face full of water for his trouble. Chuckling and scratching his neck, Naruto too was soaked. I did it. Not believing this bullshit, Jiraiya pointed at the boy, do it again. Watching the boy pull a water balloon and concentrate, after a few seconds of work the balloon rippled, expanded, and popped. Wiping his face clean of yet more water, Jiraiya groaned. Leave it to the kid to get it down so fast. Guess all that chakra control was good for something. Keep practicing on the rest of the bag, your goal for now is to increase your speed. Muttering and cursing under his breath at the unfairness of youth, Jiraiya led the way. He just knew this wasn't going to end well for him. Back in the village, it was a confused but determined Hinata making her way to the Yamanaka flower shop. Hands in her jacket pockets, one was closed around a scroll she had been given not even a full 3 hours ago. She had wanted to find Naruto first, but his teammates had alerted her that he was sent out on a long-term mission. Which once she had calmed down some was probably for the best. After the exams and the invasion, she had temporarily forgotten about her personal project of looking into the Uzumaki clan. Forgotten so much in fact that when a courier ninja showed up for her at the Hyuga clan estate with a sealed scroll and a letter, she had no idea what to make of it at first. Now however, after reading both, she wasn't sure what to think, and since she had only brought this up with one other person, she was going to get another opinion. Ino looked up from her book on plants and their common uses as the door opened with a bell chime. Welcome to the O. Hey Hinata, what's up? Hinata was looking around and seemed to relax when no one was present. This seemed like something serious to Ino, so she closed her book and gave her friend and rival her full attention. Hinata finally came up to the counter and pulled out the scroll she had been given. Do you remember when I mentioned that I was looking into the history of the Uzumaki clan? How there was missing records for something like 150 years. At Ino's nod the girl went on, I forgot before the exams I put in a request for anything related to Uzumaki Kushina. I was sure it would be denied or at least told nothing was there. But, taking a deep breath and saying a prayer for the departed, she moved one. With the third gone, it seems someone in records is approving requests for pretty much anything right now. Ino's eyebrows rose dramatically. Well, that's not sketchy at all. Hinata agreed, but we benefit. I received this scroll. It details not only who Kushina was, but where she came from, what happened to all of her assets upon her death, and who was left of her family. Now looking Ino in the eye, the normally quiet girl was grim. That includes her son, Naruto. If Ino's eyebrows could raise even more, they would probably fly off her face. Okay. So we know Naruto's mom. That's a good thing, right? She wasn't seeing what had Hinata so worried right away. It was here that Hinata's face took on a nervous fret and she began to play with her fingers. Some things I noticed, however. 1. Why not tell Naruto about his mother in the first place? 2. All of her assets. They were supposed to be left to Naruto, and yet as far as we know nothing was ever left to Naruto intentionally. Yes, Naruto has a few books and scrolls after finding them in the library. But what if he never had visited? Would they have stayed there? 3. More than the scrolls and books, there were financial assets as well, all of which had been labeled as liquidated. Why? She had a son. Wouldn't the council know that her child would need or want those things in the future? Ino held up a hand. Wait, back up, you're saying the council is involved in this? Hinata lowered her voice unconsciously as she nodded. Of course they're involved. They're the only ones who could make these decisions at the time. Rolling open the scroll for Ino to see, it was this part that told her something more was going on. Look at the dates when all of the measures calling for either liquidation or removal of her assets were approved. Ino frowned now as she followed the other girl's finger. October 10th. Why does that sound familiar? Trailing off, there were two pieces of information that stuck with her. The Kyuubi attack. Hinata nodded, and coincidentally Naruto's birthday. Ino stepped back with a thumbnail in her mouth as she began to worry over it and the problem growing in her head. She felt like something was missing. So Naruto's mom apparently dies during the attack just after giving birth to him. And all of the Uzumaki clan possessions get repossessed and then sold off or distributed by the council. Naruto is put, what, in an orphanage and isn't ever told about his family or heritage. And he for sure isn't given anything. We know the council made those decisions. But we don't fully understand why. I figured of anyone who might be willing to help me puzzle this out it was you. Hinata could trust her rival at least when it came to helping their mutual crush. Ino nodded now. After everything Naruto absolutely needs a win. While she had noticed the general feelings from the villagers about Naruto were improving, there was still something off about them. Again, as if there was something that was missing. Hinata moved a finger along the scroll, pointing at another line that held the woman's various titles. This was something that caught my attention as well. I don't know what it means yet, but it feels important. Ino looked down again. Jinchuriki. Power of human sacrifice. What kind of title is that? Hinata shrugged and rolled up the scroll, tucking it back into her open jacket. I don't know, but I haven't been able to find anything about it at all. Do you have some free time later to go over everything with me? Maybe we can have some information for Naruto when he gets back. Ino thought it over for all of a second. For Naruto, yeah, I can help you out. Shaking herself and feeling like something cold just ran down her spine, the blonde looked over Hinata's shoulder. No Hyuga watchers today it seemed. You have any idea where Naruto went? Could give us an idea of how long we have. Hinata shook her head as outside they both watched several Anbu fly by overhead. No clue. But since they said it was a long-term mission we probably have at least a week. Hinata didn't hear any alarms, so it must not have been an emergency. Ino went back to open her book. Cool, so we have time to work through a council-level conspiracy. Think I should try asking my dad anything. Hinata thought it over before deciding she couldn't make that call for the girl. I know my father, and he would be distrustful of me doing this. He already doesn't want me as a clan head, preferring my sister. You know your dad better. Remember you'd be asking him about information we probably aren't supposed to have. Ino sighed. You're probably right there. I'll leave dad alone for now. Oh, maybe we can ask Sasuke. Sakura mentioned something about him supposed to have council duties, or at least council-level access. Maybe he can get us more. It's worth the effort, plus he's Naruto's teammate, he might be willing to help out. They had bonded well since becoming Team 7. Okay. When I close up come back and we can go over things in my room. We can hunt down Sasuke tomorrow and plan more. Hinata took that as her cue to leave and did so, waving goodbye to Ino as she did. She felt like she was still missing something major, though it was just out of her reach. Every hidden village had its skeletons, but Hinata felt like she was pulling at a big one. As she looked up to the sky, she hoped that Naruto was doing well wherever he was. Naruto, however, was in a great mood while he and his sensei walked through the first village of their trip. He had burst all of the water balloons to Jiraiya's satisfaction, and had been given a bag of rubber balls to start the next phase. Though had been told not to attempt it at all until tomorrow once they were back on the road. Something about not freaking out normal people in the village or something. Ninja were supposed to be stealthy, the elder nin had advised. Naruto could do stealthy. Sometimes. If he wanted. Jiraiya, however, had just finished checking them into their hotel for the night and was handing Naruto the room key. You go on and get settled, I'll be back in a bit. Gotta go check on some of my informants. Naruto rolled his eyes. You mean go and pick up on hookers? Why are you such a pervert? Cackling at seeing the down boy finally showing some normal spirit, and Sage waved over his shoulder. Just you wait, boy, you'll understand one day. Taking off and getting lost in the crowd, Naruto was left walking into the hotel and up to their room. Of all the dirty pervs. First the Sandame, then Kakashi sensei, and now pervy Sage. Can't I have just one normal sensei? Wondering however if Gigi counted, but then also remembering that he had Iruka as a sensei as well. He let himself into the assigned room and closed the door behind him. Figuring that he was alone in the room and no perverts to tell him no, he could at least get some training in. Before he could do that, however, there was a knock at the door. You forget something, old man. Returning to the door and opening it, he was met with red clouds, Looking up, there was a man with blue skin and shark-like teeth, while another who looked like an older, more moody Sasuke. Itachi was looking down at the boy. Naruto-kun, would you be good and come with us? I'd like to keep things peaceful. Ah, come on, Itachi, let me cut off a leg or two, he won't run then. This was Itachi, Sasuke's older brother and the guy that killed his whole clan. What the hell did they want with him? What for? I didn't know Sasuke's brother was into guys. Kisame snorted. Oh man, wait, hold on. Slapping Itachi on the shoulder and shaking him, he could barely hold in his laughter. Is that why I never see you try to get laid? Naruto went to close the door. Yeah, sorry, I'm into cute girls, but I'm sure you'll find someone. There was no way he was fighting Sasuke's older brother, at least not without his team. Foot blowing the door off of its hinges, Itachi frowned. We're not here for you. But we are here for the Kyuubi. So come along. Here his eyes formed into a mature set of the Sharingan, or things will be unpleasant. Itachi, I'll kill you. From down the hall, Sasuke was already running towards them, a Chidori blossoming in his hand. Seeing the man distracted, Naruto was already mid-swing with the Kubikiribocho. He'd ask Sasuke why he was here later, he would be helping with his vengeance now. Oop. Kisame leaned in and brought his own weapon around, blocking Naruto from getting to Itachi. You're a little early for a big weapon like that. His eyes widened as the bandages on the end of the weapon sizzled. How's shrapnel taste? The last half-meter of the weapon exploded, sending fire and red-hot metal in the direction of the legendary swordsman and the clan killer. Kisame was caught by surprise but was able to block most of any of the damage, however the blast sent him through the wall and out of the building through the next room over. Itachi had slightly more time to react due to his Dujutsu being active, however he still had to retreat further down the hall. More space and time to prepare though, for when Sasuke burst through the cloud of smoke trailing lightning, it took no effort to grab his brother and break his wrist. Still so weak, little brother. Gearing up to drop Sasuke into his genjutsu, he had to lean away as a clone burst forward trying to grab him. He idly noted the ring of seals around its wrist. Another clone was pulling Sasuke back while the real Naruto was coming out of the room with a shorter damage sword. It's a little tight for a fight in here. Sasuke groaned. Not much of a choice. Kisame burst back into the hallway, sword high and a grin splitting his face, so the little punk has some bite. Let's shave off a limb or two, see how long that lasts. The blade came down. Naruto did his best to bring his own blade up to block the attack, but was instantly driven to a knee even after bracing the blade with his other hand. Groaning with the strain, he noted that Kisame was only using one hand. Ha ha ha. Common, I heard you were hot shit. Blowing up one of the biju and whatnot. Where are your fancy bombs now? Suddenly the walls began to take on a pink fleshy tinge, the sticky surface ing them all down somewhat. From where the hallway led to the lobby, a sprinting Jiraiya could be seen. Itachi frowned and stood straight. Come Kisame, we can't win this now. It was just getting good too. Frowning but turning to leave with his partner, he moved first. I'll be coming for you Itachi. Sasuke was livid and wanted to keep fighting, but already the damage to his wrist had cleared up his judgment somewhat. His brother had little to no problem handling him, and Naruto wouldn't be able to back him up. That was a bad combination. Itachi frowned. Don't worry, maybe when he learns the truth you both will be coming to me on your own. And then they were gone, followed by the toad sage around a corner. Naruto sighed and sat on the fleshy floor, broken and now cracked sword laying next to him. Well, that happened. Sasuke nodded and pulled his wrist to his chest. Any idea what he meant by that? Naruto hesitated, thinking on whether he should tell his friend about his burden or not. In the end he decided he would, but together with the whole team. I think so. I'll get back to you on that when I get back to the village. He had forgotten that he hadn't told his team about the Kyuubi. Considering though that it was relatively recently that he found he could trust them, however, he hoped he could be forgiven. Sasuke did tell him about his family and goals, so maybe Naruto should trust him as well. Around them the halls returned to normal, the pink flesh receding with the return of Naruto's mentor. Looking down at the boy with a knocked-out woman over his shoulder, the toad sage sighed, can't you stay out of trouble for like 10 minutes? Naruto leaned back on his hands while Sasuke sat against the wall next to him. I don't know, can you not be a pervert for 10 minutes? You brat Dynamic entry. A green and orange blur swept through the window and into the hall, kicking the toad sage and rescuing the woman from his shoulder. While the sage went tumbling out of the hole Naruto had made, the revealed Might Guy was grinning and looking down to the surprised boys. You're safe now, I'll deal with the intruders, and, in a flash, Jiraiya was back. You idiot. It's me, Jiraiya. Oh. Looking between the toad sage and the woman over his shoulder, the bowl-cut wearing man frowned. Why do you have a knocked-out woman with you? That's, like I said, don't be a pervert for like 10 minutes. Hearing a crunch of glass behind them, Sakura was panting and climbing through the broken window. Hey, the gang's all here. I'm never traveling with Guy-sensei ever again. Trying her hardest to catch her breath, she fell to her knees between the two boys. Who's hurt? She hugged them both in relief, however, glad to see them in one piece. Waving the girl off with a smile, Naruto relaxed all the same. We're fine Sakura, urk. The arm around his neck tightened painfully, cutting off his precious blood supply. Sasuke's hurt. He was free and could breathe. Precious air. Traitor. Sakura set upon him to check on his injuries and with a lecture about running off without backup and barely a plan. If she hadn't seen him, she never would have called one of the senseis to help. Ignoring the kids and getting weird deja vu, Jiraiya turned to Guy. Can you get the other kiddies back home? Naruto and I need to complete our mission. Which for now means we need to move hotels. Guy nodded as he set the woman on the bed in the less destroyed room and motioned to Sasuke and Sakura. Alright, you two are with me. Naruto-kun is with his mentor. Sakura was bandaging Sasuke's wrist while they both stood. Itachi got to Kakashi-sensei. He's alive, but he's under a powerful genjutsu. Sasuke was angry that his brother had hurt someone else close to him and had tried to take one of his friends. But there wasn't much more he could do now. Naruto nodded and bumped his rival's shoulder. Don't worry, apparently we're off to go find a legendary healer. So we'll have sensei all better when we return. Unsaid was how long it would take, but both of his teammates knew that if Naruto said he was going to get it done, it'd get done. Jiraiya sighed and grabbed his protege. Let's go, before I end up with a whole troop of you brats. Getting the finger for his trouble, he physically threw Naruto out of the hole he made in the wall. We'll be back ASAP. And with that, both master and apprentice were gone. Sakura worried as she finished her self-imposed task. Should we be worried? She heard cursing in the distance and just knew the blonde wouldn't let that toss go. Sasuke let Guy herd them away before the locals started getting too curious. It's Naruto. They both heard a distant explosion. So be worried. Only if you can see the explosion. Jiraiya could admit to himself that for a ninja he was getting up there in age. For most, this was the time to retire, to teach the next generation from relaxation and maybe settle down finally. How could he consider that though? There were so many beautiful women to see, so many lands to explore and ideas to put down on paper. He was old but experienced and crafty, willing to fight dirty against upstarts that thought they could take his place. All that said, as he walked along with a happy and carefree Naruto hummed along behind him, he only had one wish. I'm getting hammered with Tsunade when we find her. This isn't fair at all. I blame your father. Though he was muttering under his breath, the Toad Sage was still upset. Naruto was happily bursting the rubber balls with abandon. And only after 3 days. 3 Kami-forsaken days. If the little brat wasn't family, he would toss him in a hole somewhere. Naruto looked up from where he was practicing with regular balloons. Considering all of his chakra control practice up till now, this wasn't turning out to be as hard as the old sage said it would be. Maybe the old man was just getting up there in age and was just forgetful. What was that pervy sage? Nothing, you mind. We're coming up on the next town. There's a huge gambling tournament going on and that's bound to attract Tsunade. Maybe he'd find a book on Uzumaki seals to toss at him, let him ponder over those for the rest of his life. Losing concentration and popping another balloon, Naruto tossed it and removed another from his bag. No chance of fighting any crazy ninja, huh? I'd rather not have to hunt wild animals to fix Kubikiribocho. While he had thought about making that a regular tactic, it was a little excessive. Using the end of a self-repairing blade as a grenade sounded great, until it was time to fix said blade. And while he didn't consider himself a great swordsman, he did at least respect it and Zabuza's memory enough not to just go ham on some animals. Jiraiya nearly told the kid to go wander through Iowa, there'd be plenty of blood for him there, but stopped himself. Even now the kid was starting to look too much like his father. And after his little bombing, someone was already circulating a new bingo book around with his name already in it. He'd have to keep that info away from the kid before it started going to his head. You never know, we might get hit with bandits or something along with way. Fat chance of that. No smart bandits took on obvious ninja in Fire Country. In fact, a lot of them have been rather quiet as of late. Looking at the kid from the corner of his eye, he considered it was probably the explosion boy's fault. Naruto shrugged and focused on his task, trying to get his best time up to 5 minutes. Should I make a bunch of clones and go hunting for the old lady? Absolutely not. Ah, common. I'm recovered and making clones is easy for me. Plus it's not combat. Jiraiya didn't think he'd have to explain it to the kid, but he had to remember that he was just a genin. Tsunade will feel such a massive chakra use and freak out. She'll bolt and we won't find her again until we hit lightning. No, we gotta be stealthy. You get that? Stealthy. I can do stealthy. There's a glass crater not far from Konoha that says otherwise. Naruto grumbled under his breath that he absolutely could do stealthily. He had painted the Hokage monument after all, in broad daylight. Everyone seemed to forget that. Fine, no clones. Should I take off my headband? Jiraiya nodded. Yeah, and seal up the giant pig sticker too. Hi, I'm on it. Taking off his headband and stashing it in a pocket inside his jacket, he then sealed the large sword from his back to a special seal on the inside of his wrist. Smiling at seeing his work paying off, he went back to working with the air-filled balloons. He still hadn't popped this one and he was determined to keep it that way. Hey pervy sage, got a question. What up kid? How do you determine your elemental affinity? Oh that, just need some chakra paper. Why, you curious? Didn't know you even knew about affinities already. Jiraiya was already rifling through his own pockets, sure that he had a scrap of the paper somewhere. Yeah well, Kushina's notes mentioned it and some of the other training scrolls brought it up for chakra control exercises. Wanted to get a head start. The old perv did say the Rasengan wasn't complete, and what better way to complete something than tune it to a nature. Not that he'd start that until he learned how to throw it, however. Aha! Pulling a scrap of the paper free, he handed it over to Naruto, who stopped his practice to take it. Just add a little chakra to the paper. It can burn, crinkle, crumble, get wet, and split in two. In order that represents fire, lightning, earth, water, and wind. If you get combinations of results, that usually means multiple affinities or possibly a hidden bloodline. Watching Naruto channel a bit of chakra and the paper split, the man nodded. Wind. A little rare for a leaf nin, but not unheard of. Naruto nodded while handing the paper back to Jiraiya. If he remembered right, he saw some mention of control techniques for wind nature. But he'd have to wait for when he got back to Konoha before starting that. Once again focusing on the ball in his hand, he only half paid attention as they finally crested a hill to see the town they were meant to search for the next few days. Tanzaku town had a large castle to its rear, while on all sides was surrounded by a high wall. Currently hosting a festival, it was a high chance, according to Jiraiya, that Tsunade was here. So after some time and making their way into town, booking a hotel, both set out with today's goal of finding the legendary ninja. For Naruto, that meant watching Jiraiya wandering off in the direction of brothels with a grand smile on his face. Deciding that the pervert was going to catch something one day, Naruto went in the opposite direction. Secretly unsealing a balloon, he continued his practice as he walked along. It was a lively place, this town, and it was nice as far as he was concerned. No one looked at him like he was dirt here. If anything, barely anyone looked at him at all. He was just another kid in a sea of faces, and the true anonymity was refreshing. So he wandered while keeping an eye out, enjoying festival food and even buying a black Oni mask for the fun of it. Though eventually his wandering took him along a route that dumped him in front of the castle. It's